Hello everyone. This video will present, in brief, the history of Microsoft. There will be presented the most important events in the history of the company. How it all began. The founders of the company, etc. Microsoft, though it evokes extreme feelings, is now one of the most recognizable brands in the world. The founders, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, started out in a small flat, not even having their own computer. Very quickly, however, it turned out that they fitted perfectly into the market needs. The company's turnover 3 years after its creation exceeded $1.3 million, while in 1991 it sold over $1 trillion worth of products annually. Today, Microsoft employs over 90,000 people in 125 countries around the world. There is no doubt that Microsoft is one of the biggest giants driving the American economy. Young Bill first saw a computer at the age of 13. The school he went to had purchased the machine for its students. The fascinated teenager paid for the time to use the computer like everyone else, but when he ran out of money, he hacked the device so he could use it for free. He was suspended from school, but after a few days the school realized that the student had a really rare gift, and decided to use it. They asked Bill to help them find bugs in the system. Absence from lessons turned out not to hinder the genius in the tests, as he scored 1590/1600 on the SAT exam, which allowed him to get into Harvard Law School. As he strolled around the school campus in the winter of 1975, one of his friends, Paul Allen, also a programming enthusiast, showed him a newspaper announcing a new microcomputer, the Altair 8800. They both understood then that within a few years, the computer age would be here and that programming languages would be in high demand. Bill called the head of MITS, the manufacturer of the Altairs, offering to provide him with software for the first personal computers. But don't think Gates was in possession of that software at the time, he hadn't even started. A later interview with Bill Gates revealed the difficulties the partners faced in establishing themselves in the burgeoning software market. In an interview with the National Museum of American History, Gates recalls, "I had no doubt that we could create BASIC. I was really confident at the time. We didn't know how long it would take to write the script. It was fun because we kept pretending that we really already had BASIC. We worked day and night in those days." At first Paul was doing validation tests on an Intel emulator, and in the meantime I was designing the look, coding BASIC. A colleague on campus, Monty Davidoff, squatted down at lunch and said he knew floating point operations, so he helped us with the mathematical calculations. We wrote this program without even seeing the Altair machine, except in a newspaper picture, and suddenly we found that BASIC worked. Then we called MITS to ask, by the way, what are the subroutines for reading characters from teletype and encoding them back? How do you do that? Bill Yates, who also authored the article, said it's really interesting. Everybody who called us said they would do the program, but nobody ever asked about putting the data into the machine. You guys sound really serious. You guys should come to us and show it to us. And, because we never had a whole chip, just an Intel book, if we made any mistake, BASIC would never work. The founding of Microsoft. In the spring of 1975, at Albuquerque City Hall in the state of New Mexico, the then 19-year-old Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who was 2 years older, registered Microsoft, spelled at the time with a division, Microsoft, which was short for microcomputer software. On August 22 of the same year, Allen and Gates finally signed a contract with Ed Roberts, president of MITS. The contract gave MITS exclusive rights to use BASIC for 10 years. MITS also agreed not to license the program to third parties without first obtaining a confidentiality agreement that prohibited unauthorized disclosure of BASIC. The contract was for $3,000, in addition to which Microsoft received $30 for each copy of the program. The partners were also assured 50% on the revenue derived from licensing the BASIC source code, which allowed companies to modify the program and use it for new applications. Microsoft's contract with MITS was later considered a model in the category of creating software licensing agreements. On November 22, 1976, the partners decided to reserve the Microsoft trade name with the New Mexico State office. That same month Allen resigned from MITS to devote himself fully to his own company. Just a year later, Apple and Radio Shack introduced BASIC to the Apple II and Tandy computers they produced. In the same year, Microsoft released its second programming language, Fortran, which was followed by a version of COBOL in 1978. Both languages were compatible with the CP/M operating system, which was very popular in the rapidly growing microcomputer market. As CP/M was adopted by major computer manufacturers such as Sirius, Zenith, and Sharp, the Young Programmers Company became the leading distributor of programming languages. By the end of 1978, Microsoft had 13 employees, a branch in Japan and $1 million in revenue. The partners then decided to move the company to Bellevue, Washington. Partnership with IBM, the first $1 million in revenue. Microsoft's next success came about 5 years later, when IBM created its first computer. The enterprising Gates agreed to provide the company with a basic language interpreter along with an operating system. At the time, Microsoft was the leading software provider, but it was Digital Research that was leading the market. IBM then sent a delegation to the creators of the famous CP/M system, but it turned out that, despite the previously arranged visit, CEO Gary Kildall left the office. The computer company therefore decided to contact Microsoft. The only stumbling block was that Gates and Allen's company had no IBM-compatible system in store. When Gates heard that IBM was offering a partnership, he immediately contacted SPC, a local Seattle computer company that owned the QDOS operating system, Quick and Dirty Operating System, later renamed to the more serious-sounding MS-DOS. Microsoft bought the system for $50,000, even though it did not work very well at the time. The programmers improved the code and signed a contract with IBM under which MS-DOS was installed on every company computer. The contract also guaranteed that Microsoft could sell the developed system independently. The contract amounted to $430,000. As IBM computers became successful, most computer manufacturers began using MS-DOS as the operating system for their computers, generating huge profits for Microsoft. By the early 1990s, Allen and Gates Company had sold more than 100 million copies of the program, beating the then most popular system CP/M and IBM OS/2. The company also entered the information and entertainment services sector with a wide range of products that included the Encarta Multimedia Encyclopedia and the Microsoft Network and MSNBC, a joint venture with NBC, the major U.S. television network. Only a year later, Microsoft went public, at the time becoming the most profitable company in American history, gaining 25 cents for every dollar auctioned. The birth of Windows. The first mention of Windows came in 1983, when Microsoft announced it was working on a new project. Windows 1.0 was released in 1985, but despite appearances, it was not very popular at the time. In 1989 Microsoft released Office and became the leader in Office software, beating longtime rivals Lotus and WordPerfect. Microsoft's real success, however, came only with the release of Windows 3.0 on May 22, 1990, improved by, among other things, a graphical interface. During the first 2 years after releasing the system on the market, the company managed to sell more than 10 million copies. In 1993, Windows 3.0 and its subsequent upgrades were selling at the rate of 1 million copies per month. What's more, nearly 90% of the world's computers at the time were using an operating system released by Microsoft. Released on August 22, 1995, Windows 95 completely integrated MS-DOS into Windows for the first time, also introducing new features such as the Start menu and the ability to use Internet Explorer. Within the first 5 weeks of its release, the system sold 7 million copies. With the dawn of the new millennium, Windows XP entered the market as the only system running on the NT kernel. Subsequent versions of Windows appeared successively in 2003, Windows Server, 2006, Windows Vista, 2009, Windows 7, 2013, Windows 8, and 2014, Windows 10. Despite the unfavorable conditions, the corporation released new products. Microsoft expanded its business by launching, among others, the Xbox console, facing industry giants such as Sony and Nintendo. 3 years later, the next generation of the console, Xbox 360, was launched, which soon broke sales records in America and around the world. In 2011, Microsoft became the owner of Skype Technologies, a deal worth $8.5 trillion at the time. In September 2013, another big deal was struck between Microsoft and Finland's Nokia, in which Microsoft acquired Nokia's Devices and Services division. An even more expensive deal was the purchase of LinkedIn in December 2016. The corporation paid more than $26 trillion. Mojang, the producer of the game Minecraft, among others, also joined the list of acquired companies. Among Microsoft's most profitable products are the Windows operating system, Windows Mobile, and the lesser-known XFAT file system, sold mainly to large enterprises. The corporation, although one of the oldest in the computer market, is still thriving. Microsoft's revenue for the second quarter of 2017 was more than $26 trillion, with earnings per share of 83 cents, once again performing above analysts' expectations.